The specular intensity here does almost does somewhat of the same thing, but specularity is pretty much the like if you see like a hot spot in an object that has a light on it, the specular intensity is pretty much what that is. It's almost like reflection. So if I turn this up, you can see that the picture gets hotter. And I turn it down, you don't see that hot spot in the middle anymore. And by the hot spot, if I zoom in here, you can see around this edge here where that light is really hot. That's the hot spot. I'll set that back down to what it was at 50. And lastly, another thing that affects how much light your object is getting is going to be the intensity of the light. So if you come in, if you double click on the layer, there's an intensity section here, and if I lower that, then the light is going to be less intense. And if you go into the negatives, it's going to suck out light, which is kind of weird, but it has its uses. Put that back onto 100. And of course, if you have a layer that's blocking another layer from receiving light and casting shadows on it or something like that, then that of course is going to affect the brightness of the light of the layer. There is another factor that comes into when you're determining how bright something's going to be, and that's called ambient. Now if I come back down to the material options again, there is this section called ambient, and this is the amount of light that is already on the scene, and this JPEG isn't really affected too much by the ambient at all, so it's hard to show on this one. But also, if you have another type of light on there called ambient light, this type of light illuminates the entire scene regardless of where the light is. So there's another example of the light going on there. So if I bring the intensity of this ambient down to like 2, it's going to be a lot less. But I'll go over ambient lighting later on, and there's not much to it. It's pretty much what I just showed you, but I'll still go over it later. So if you take into consideration all those factors, the final brightness of the layer is pretty much the sum of its diffuse value, the specular, and the ambient light that's going on around there. Now, lights don't have an opacity, they have an intensity. So if you press T on your keyboard, you might think it might go to opacity, but now it goes to intensity for a light, and that's the easy way to change that. And you can go past 100, and you can go into the negatives. So be aware of that factor. Now, lights can be moved around and animated just like your camera, and the light has also a point of interest just like your camera. So if I go into my 2 views here and check out my light, there is the point of interest, and if I wanted to, I could move that point of interest around. Let's see if I can actually grab it. There. That's how you use the selection tool, and then that'll move your point of interest around actually. And it's different from the other points of interest or anchor points or anything like that, where apparently you don't need to use the pan behind tool. I was just thinking that because I don't know, everything else is like that. So that's the introduction that I'm going to give you for lights. Lights do not need to be made 3D because they are only pretty much useful in 3D layers. 2D layers ignore lights, and they'll be rendered without the light even affecting them. So just keep that in mind. So go ahead and you can try to play around with the different lights if you want, and in the next couple tutorials I'll go over the cool stuff that you can do with lighting and how it makes your 3D scenes look that more realistic and better. So just don't be like me and smash your head off any lights while you're going around working and stuff like that. So I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next tutorial, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.